I need you to listen closely. Time is slipping away faster than you realize, and this story has the power to change your life. My name is Lucas Sterling, and I was just 13 years old when I experienced something that would haunt me forever. It was February 12th, 2019, an ordinary morning in New York City. Or at least, that's what I thought. I had been a competitive swimmer since the age of 6, and the pool felt like my second home. That day, at 5:30 a.m., I was pushing myself harder than ever, determined to break my personal record in the 400-meter freestyle. I can still feel the burn in my muscles as I powered through the final stretch. My lungs screamed for air, my arms ached, but I refused to slow down. Then, out of nowhere, something went terribly wrong. A strange sensation spread through my chest, tight, heavy, like an invisible fist clenching my heart. Later, I would learn that I had an undiagnosed heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. My heart simply stopped. There was no pain, just a crushing pressure in my head. The water around me darkened, and in an instant, I was floating. A strange weightlessness overtook me, and I realized I was no longer inside my body. This can't be the end. That was my last thought before everything changed. What happened next is almost impossible to put into words. Many people don't believe me when I tell them. But I promise you, it was more real than anything I've ever experienced in this world. As my body lay lifeless in the pool, I found myself looking down from above. I saw everything, the chaos, the panic. My coach was screaming for help. Lifeguards and teammates rushed toward me, their faces frozen in shock, their voices frantic, calling my name. But I felt no fear. It was as if I were watching a scene from a movie, detached, calm, distant. Then, in an instant, everything shifted. Something yanked me backward. Fast. I was pulled into a tunnel of darkness. But this wasn't just emptiness. It was alive, pulsing, thick with something I couldn't explain. It pressed in on me, suffocating. Shadows moved within the blackness, shifting like living smoke. Then, I heard them. The voices. They weren't just sounds. They carried weight, emotion, a depth of suffering that shook me to my core. Screams. Wails. Desperate, hopeless cries for help. The air itself trembled with agony. Then came the hands. They reached for me from the abyss, cold, clawing, inhuman. Their touch didn't burn like fire. It burned like despair itself, sinking into me, dragging me down. I fought, but the harder I struggled, the deeper I sank into the suffocating blackness. It was endless. It was hopeless. And then, light. It exploded all around me, not just bright, but alive. A force of warmth, power, and something so overwhelming I can only describe it as perfect love. The darkness shrieked as it was torn apart, recoiling like a wounded beast. And in the center of that blinding radiance stood a figure. Jesus. But not the soft, gentle image from Sunday school or paintings. He was overwhelming. His presence was like standing before a raging ocean. Beautiful, terrifying, infinite. I fell to my knees, unable to look directly at him. My entire being trembled as his voice filled me, not just my ears, but my soul. Lucas. The way he said my name held both perfect love and deep sorrow. It was as if he saw every part of me, every thought, every decision, every hidden moment of my life. You know why you are here. I wanted to answer, but how do you speak to the creator of the universe? He didn't need my words. With a simple gesture, he showed me my life. It played before me like a film, but I didn't just see it. I felt it. Every choice I had made, every selfish act, every time I had chosen pride over humility, cruelty over kindness. I saw myself laughing at someone's humiliation, walking past people who needed help, ignoring the pain of others. But then, I saw something else. The small acts of kindness I had done without thinking. Moments I had forgotten, but that had meant everything to someone else. A simple smile. A kind word. A time I had stood up for someone. Tiny, fleeting moments, but they mattered. Then, he showed me something even more terrifying. Hell. It wasn't a cartoonish place of fire and pitchforks. It was the absence of everything good. A void so heavy it felt like it could crush me. The darkness wasn't just around them, it was them. It consumed every soul trapped there. I saw their faces. Some of them I recognized. People who had gone to church. People who had called themselves Christians. But now, they were screaming, reaching out, begging for another chance. I thought I had more time. Over and over, they cried those words. Jesus didn't look away. Jesus opened a book, yet it was unlike any book I had ever seen. It wasn't bound in leather or paper, but made entirely of light, glowing with a radiance that seemed to pulse with life itself. This was the book of life. As he turned its pages, I saw names written in shimmering letters, each one burning like a flame. Some glowed brightly, steady and unwavering. But then, to my horror, others began to flicker and then vanish. I recognized those names. People I knew, friends from school, neighbors, even people from church, those who had prayed once, attended services, and called themselves Christians. They had believed they were safe, that they had done enough. But their hearts had never truly belonged to him. Their faith had been shallow, their commitment lukewarm. And now, their names were gone. Then Jesus showed me something even more sobering. I saw the world as it truly was, stripped of illusion. I watched as demons whispered into the ears of entire crowds, their voices smooth, persuasive, comforting. They fed the world lies, laced with just enough truth to be convincing. You have time. God is only love. You're a good person. That's enough. And people believed them. They walked blindly toward destruction, completely unaware. I saw churches filled with people, their voices rising in song, but their hearts were far from God. They worshipped with their lips, but their lives told a different story. I saw pastors standing on grand stages, delivering messages that made their congregations feel good, but never confronting sin, never speaking of repentance. Then, I saw the future. It was not just a vision. It was a descent into a world I'd barely recognized. Darkness spread, curling and twisting through every corner of society like a living shadow, suffocating the very air. It was no longer an unseen force lurking in the background, but a tangible presence that clung to everything it touched. The truth was not just mocked. It was trampled underfoot, ridiculed, and discarded as if it were a mere inconvenience. Evil, once hidden in the shadows, was no longer something to be tolerated. It was celebrated, flaunted, and exalted in every form. It paraded itself proudly, with no shame, no guilt. It was as if society had turned its back on decency and embraced the very thing that had once been feared. I saw Christians, my brothers and sisters in faith, standing in the midst of this turmoil. Some were unshaken, firm in their belief, refusing to yield despite the growing pressure. Their faces were set with a quiet, unyielding determination, their eyes fixed on the eternal hope they held dear. But others, too many others, faltered. The moment their faith was put to the test, when the cost became too great, they turned away. They abandoned everything they had believed, as though it were a garment they could simply shed and walk away from, leaving the path of righteousness behind in favor of the comfort of the world. And then, in the midst of this chaos, he appeared, an angel, radiant and commanding, standing beside me. His presence was overwhelming, as if the very air around us trembled in reverence. There was a weight in the air, an unspoken authority that left no room for doubt. When he spoke, his voice did not merely fill the space. It pierced through me, resonating deep within my soul. It was a voice that carried not just words, but a message so urgent, so dire, that I felt as if the very fabric of time itself quivered. "The time is running out," he declared, and I felt the truth of those words reverberate through my bones. Then, Jesus turned to me, his eyes full of sorrow, yet unmistakably determined. His gaze was like a fire that both warmed and consumed, drawing me in, yet burning me with the weight of what he said next. "You must go back and warn them." The weight of his words was unbearable. It felt as though the very air had thickened around me, pressing in, suffocating me. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I struggled to breathe. How could I possibly do this? How could I take this burden back to a world so lost, so distracted by the fleeting pleasures and distractions of life? They were consumed by their own little worlds, their phones, their entertainment, their endless arguments and pursuits. They didn't see how short time was. They didn't see what was coming. Then, in a moment that will forever haunt my soul, he showed me something that will never leave me. I saw the door closing, the door to salvation, the door that, for so many, would never open again. I saw the faces of people, their eyes wide with realization, too late. They saw the truth in that final moment, the horror of their mistake dawning upon them. They screamed. They begged. Their voices were raw with desperation, their faces contorted in terror. They pounded on the door, pleading for mercy, for one more chance, one more breath. But the door was locked. It would not open. Their time had run out. "It's too late," Jesus said, his voice thick with sorrow, a sadness so deep that it felt as though the very heavens wept with him. Tears, if you could even call them tears in that place, streamed down my face. My heart broke for them, for those who would never see the truth until it was too late. I felt a deep ache, one that ripped through me, a pain that transcended everything I had ever known. "Lord," I whispered, my voice trembling with the weight of my question, "how can I make them understand? They won't believe me." He looked at me with a tenderness that almost crushed me. "Some won't," he said, "but some will. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them that simply believing in me is not enough. Even the demons believe. Going to church is not enough. Being a good person is not enough. They must give me everything before it is too late." Then the shadows shifted, and I saw them. Demons. They gathered at the very edge of the light, lurking, waiting, their eyes burning with malice and hatred. Their forms were flickering, like living shadows, shifting and twisting in ways that defied logic. But it was their eyes, those red, unnatural eyes, that held me captive. They stared at me with contempt, as if my very existence was an affront to them. And then they laughed. It wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was a sneer, a guttural sound that slithered into my mind, echoing with mockery. "You think this will change anything?" They hissed, their voices filled with venom. "They won't listen. They love their sins too much. They will choose us, just like always." But Jesus wasn't finished. He took me to a place beyond words. He showed me heaven. The colors there defied anything I had ever seen. They were so vivid, so alive, that they seemed to pulse with life themselves. The music, it wasn't like anything I had ever heard. It was a harmony that surpassed all understanding, a perfect melody that seemed to reach into the very core of my being. And the peace. Oh, the peace. It was so overwhelming, so pure, that it felt like an embrace from which I would never want to escape. It was a peace that could never be known on earth, a peace that was beyond all comprehension. And then I saw them, people I never would have expected to see in such a place. They were the ones the world had rejected, the ones who had faced ridicule and hardship for their faith, the ones who had been forgotten, ignored, cast aside. But they had truly surrendered their hearts to Jesus, and here they stood, in the glory of heaven, radiant and alive in his presence. But there were others, too, empty places. And I knew, with a sickening certainty, who should have been there. Religious leaders, people who had spent their lives in ministry, who had spoken about God, but had never truly known him. They had relied on their works, their status, their own righteousness, but they had never truly surrendered themselves to Christ. They had never given him everything. "The door is narrow," Jesus said softly, "not because I do not want them, but because they do not want me. Not truly." Then he looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with a profound sadness and a deep urgency. "You died today, Lucas, so that you could see the truth. Now go. Tell them. The time is shorter than they think." In an instant, everything began to fade. The light dimmed, and a heavy darkness began to creep in, swallowing everything around me. I felt panic rise in my chest. "Jesus, wait." I cried out, my voice breaking with desperation. "I have so many questions. I don't understand. Please, don't go." But his response was firm, unwavering, yet filled with sorrow. "Tell them what you saw," he said, his voice steady, yet heavy with grief. "Tell them the time is running out." And then, in the blink of an eye, it was over. The light was gone. The darkness had swallowed it whole. And suddenly, I was back. Cold, chlorinated water filled my lungs as I gasped for air. My body convulsed, my heart pounded. Blinding fluorescent lights flickered above me. Voices, urgent, frantic, called out my name. Paramedics leaned over me, their hands pressing against my chest, working desperately to revive me. I had been dead for exactly 9 minutes and 36 seconds. The doctors called it a miracle. They had no explanation for why my heart had suddenly started beating again, why I had survived with no brain damage after so long without oxygen. By every medical standard, I shouldn't have made it. But I did. And I knew why. The physical recovery was grueling. 3 days in intensive care, weeks of tests, constant monitoring. But none of that compared to the real battle that began the moment I returned. Because the enemy did not want this message spoken. And I learned that lesson quickly. The attack started on my very first night home. At exactly 3 a.m., I woke up shivering. My room was ice cold. I could see my breath in the air. An unnatural chill gripped me, locking my body in place. Then, from the hallway, something moved. A shadow. But this wasn't the absence of light. It was something alive, something watching. Then I heard it. That laughter. The same cruel, mocking laughter I had heard in the spiritual realm. It slithered through the room like a whisper, curling around me like smoke. "They won't believe you," a voice hissed. "You should stay quiet. Who would listen to a boy? No one will believe you." That was just the beginning. Night after night, they came. The demons I had seen in the presence of Jesus had not forgotten me. They returned, relentless, their glowing red eyes piercing through the darkness. Sometimes, they simply stood there, watching, waiting, silent but oppressive, their presence thick with malice. Other times, they tormented me with visions of hell, forcing me to relive the horrors I had witnessed. They filled my mind with terror, twisting my thoughts, trying to break me. They whispered lies, planting seeds of doubt. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe you imagined everything. Maybe you're losing your mind. But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew what I had seen was real. And more than that, I knew why they were so desperate to silence me. Because this message is not just another testimony. It's a final warning. The most terrifying thing isn't the demons that haunt me at night. It's not even the memories of hell that still jolt me awake in a cold sweat. No, the most terrifying thing is watching people hear the truth, knowing it's real, yet still choosing to wait. I hear them say things like, "I'll get right with God when I'm older. Believing in Jesus is enough, right?" They don't understand. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. I was only 13 years old when I died. Not one soul I saw in hell had expected their time to run out when it did. And since returning, the spiritual war has only intensified. The enemy has unleashed every weapon imaginable to keep me quiet. The attacks aren't just supernatural. They come through people, too. Even other Christians. "You're too extreme. You're being too radical. You're scaring people." But how can I soften this message when I know the truth? How can I pretend this isn't urgent when I have seen what happens to those who ignore it? How can I stay silent when Jesus himself sent me back for this very reason? This is what he told me to say. Time is running out. Not just for the world, but for you. Every time you choose sin over Jesus. Every time you ignore his voice. Every time you tell yourself, "I'll follow him later." Your name begins to fade from the book of life. And one day, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, it will be too late. This world is filled with a false Christianity, a comfortable, watered-down faith that is leading people straight to hell. I saw souls in torment, completely shocked to find themselves there. They had thought, "I went to church, wasn't that enough? I was a good person, wasn't that enough? I believed in God, wasn't that enough?" But it wasn't. The demons know God is real, but that doesn't save them. What matters is complete surrender. Right now, as you read this, a battle is raging over your soul. The enemy is whispering, "You have time. God is love. He won't really send people to hell. You're a good person. That's enough." But I have seen the truth. Hell is real. The demons are working harder than ever because they know the time is almost up. Every time you justify sin, every time you choose the world over Jesus, every time you think, "I'll follow him later," you are falling into their trap. The darkness isn't coming. It's already here. Since I began sharing my testimony, I've received thousands of messages. Some mock me, some attack me, but others feel the urgency. They know this is true. They turn to Jesus with their whole hearts, not just with empty words. But for everyone who listens, hundreds refuse. God is love. He won't send people to hell. I believe in Jesus in my own way. I'm basically a good person. These are the lies that keep people blind. I saw the book of life. Belief alone is not enough. Even demons believe. What matters is a full, total, absolute surrender to Jesus. Every night, I pray for those still walking in darkness. I pray for those who think they are saved, but aren't. Because I have seen where they are heading. I have felt the torment that awaits. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. This isn't about religion. This isn't about rules or rituals. This is about a real, personal, life-transforming relationship with Jesus. When the end comes, and it will, nothing else will matter. Not your money, not your success, not your reputation. The only thing that will matter is this. Did you know Jesus? And more importantly, did he know you? The spiritual attacks continue. Just last night, I woke to find my living room thick with a demonic presence. The air itself was heavy, oppressive, laced with evil. And then I heard them. They won't believe you. You're wasting your time. Give up. But I won't. Because Jesus didn't send me back to live a normal life. He sent me back to warn you before it's too late. This is what I need you to understand. Jesus loves you. He loves you so much that he brought me back from death just to tell you this. But he won't force you to choose him. That decision is yours. But it must be total. Halfway faith isn't faith at all. The time for playing games with God is over. The time for lukewarm Christianity is finished. The door is closing, and when it closes, there will be no more chances. I know this because I have experienced it firsthand. I died. I was taken from this world and shown what lies beyond. I saw heaven in all its glory, and I saw hell in all its horror. But most importantly, I met Jesus. And he didn't just show me these things for me to keep to myself. He sent me back with one crucial message. The time is running out. We are living in the final moments. The hour is late, and the door is about to close. The question is, will you listen to this warning before it's too late? Will you heed the call before time slips away forever? Let's remember the words in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 2. For he says, "In the time of my favor I heard you, and in the day of salvation I helped you." I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. If my story resonated with you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to NDE Chronicles for more inspiring near-death experiences. It helps reach those who need to hear it. Thanks for watching.